Good afternoon. I think we're all sufficiently scared now after that was a great presentation by Jacob. Well done. Very informative. So I'm going to keep this as short as we can because I'm quite conscious you guys have been ingesting a lot of information. So we've been educating ourselves over the last hour or so, Jacob's session and others, on the bad guys, what they do, how they can do it, crimeware, ransomware. So what I'm hoping to do today is simply a piece of education on how do we get to the level where we can find these bad guys. So detecting and mitigating them within the GCC is something that I'll focus on over a very short number of slides for the next 20 minutes or less. So a little bit of background. I've been living in the UAE for about 8 years now. I've run a practice called Mandiant. So basically, Equifax, Uber, publicly listing us as responding to them for the breach, Bangladesh Bank, and a lot of other banks in the GCC that we're not aware of. Our jobs is to respond to cyber attacks, be the feet on the ground. We have the largest incident response team in the GCC, with about 20 guys, completely flat out. So over the last years, I've seen everything from Shamoon 2.0, and a whole surgence of nation-state activity targeting the region here. In mid-2015, we were part of uncovering a campaign targeting about 12 banks in one day in the GCC. I won't name the country. I'm sure you were aware of it. So all those lessons learned, let's try and bring that to the precipice today. So our job and all we do in the office, day in, day out, is help customers respond to incidents and get back to normal business. But to do that, you have to be good at hunting the adversaries, right? We talk about them as threat actors, cyber criminals, whatever it might be. To hunt them, you need to know their motivations, you need to know their tools, the tactics, where do they hide, where are their servers, and that's the threat intelligence we see the platform when we talk about the central bank and IOCs. These are the indicators, the atomic indicators that let us know if something is present or not in our network. So let's figure out how we get to that type of stage just in a couple of slides. We're not going to go too much into depth. So over the last 8 years, when I deal with customers, and particularly banks, they have no problem, well, seemingly, they have no problem detecting things. They buy the latest technologies, the latest hardware, and they're able to detect things. But then what do we do? Most of the customers that I work with have a saturation of information. It's loading up their teams, loading up their SOC, loading up their risk teams, etc. So our job is to try and help with how we respond to this. So let's go through a couple of the baseline things that we need to focus on. And this is something, obviously, we worked heavily a lot with some of the banks in here, UAE, and Saudi, and other countries in the GCC. So our job really is to help customers, when they find something, is to triage it. What happened? Figure out the context. Threat intelligence is quite key and pivotal to that. Okay, so we find something, we find footprints. Okay, who else had similar size footprints? Have they been used before? Have they been seen in another bank? Are these people financially motivated? Or are they working on the behest of another nation government? These are all questions we need to do, and this gives us the context. If I can tell you that a Russian nation-state group has been within your network for 199 days versus I found a piece of potentially unwanted programs on your computer and was deleted, the context and priority allows customers to effectively respond. Right? So they know where to put their people, they know where to put their resources. And this is how we start cutting through this whole event overload issue. We also need a timeline. Most executives, when we're sitting down with them, they ask, when did this happen? I've produced a report to customers here in the GCC that they were compromised 1,641 days ago. That's when the first actor got in. The average is, anyone know from the trends? 200? 179? Okay, so technically, you're right at a point in time in history. It's come down to 99 days. So it takes about 99 days before we become aware of threat actors within our environment. So they get in April, 99 days later, I figure them out that they're there. What do they do during those 99 days? Well, that was whatever their goals were. Threat intelligence usually helps us understand their goals and modus operandus. The last thing we do, this is really key, we find problems. The traditional response is take it off the network, reimage it. And then the same issue happens a week later. Take it off the network, reimage it. This is a lot of time invested by people wasted. So we ask customers, was this anywhere else in the network? We don't know. We don't know how to check that. We got to check that. Let's not play whack-a-mole, expending resources and time. Let's fully scope this incident and close it. So we help customers do that as well. So, technically, this is the last slide. So that's a smile. You can smile, guys. So how do we get to this level where we're able to find these adversaries? Just to put this in context, why do we want it? Why are we talking about, and thank you, by the way, sir, for the 200. That was a good guess. Why do we care about the time? So if you bring an organization in like ourselves, if you dwell on it, so what do we mean by dwell? Well, if you find an attack and you wait a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, because you're thinking, what should we do? How should we deal with this? Should we bring someone in? Should we bring in legal? Should we bring in PR? What should we do? Every week that you dwell, that's about $100,000 worth of time that you're going to pay. So if you dwell about 6 weeks and you call us, your bill is going to be about $600K. On top of that, you're going to have a lot of resources that you're going to use by your people, and then you're going to start buying all sorts of other things. So this is how we start getting to these million-dollar figures. You ever see those slides where you have vendors like me and others who say, oh, a breach costs you $3 million? Do you ever wonder where that money comes from? That's the direct and indirect costs associated to a breach. Okay? Now, obviously, we're all aware of the ransomware type attacks, but then we have a lot of other types of attacks that cost banks and organizations a lot of money to remediate. So, how do we build ourselves up to this level where we're comfortable we can minimize risk by being ahead of these attackers, effectively finding them within the short period of time? Let's assume you will get breached. Let's say it will happen, but you want to get it down to 1 day that they're in your network. That's it. You want to give them just 1 day, and you want them out. As far as the manager will be concerned, and as far as you should be concerned, that's brilliant. That's a very, very good thing. Because there's not a lot they can do in the 1 day. So how do we get to that level? Well, it's stepping stones. Customers here in the region do great jobs at getting through these steps, but it's a journey. So you'll see there, this is what it looks like over time. We've all been fed the antivirus and firewalls for compliance. Then we got the IDPSs. So we started installing more inline devices. Then we basically put some contract with somebody that we might call them, maybe, maybe not, just legal terms and conditions. So we put those agreements in place. Then we started buying our next-gen firewalls. And then suddenly the SIM came, right? So we bought our SIM. Now we have huge amounts of information, billions of logs. So at this point, we're pretty confident that we have our detection in place. Okay? The problem is the adversary that we're dealing with, right? And you saw Jacob's discussions there about how clever, sophisticated they are, using fileless or file-based malware. they're very good at getting in. And the P in APT stands for persistent. It means they don't stop. Why would they? There's no ramifications. They breach your network, you remediate. Why wouldn't they try again? What's to stop them? There's no liability. There's no consequences. So this is where we traditionally were. Now, what we then started needing to do was, how do we figure out the advanced tools that they use, right? So in real time, how can we see these new tools they develop that antivirus is not aware of? And how can I see them in real time in such a way that as they come into my network, like a 0 day or anything, the terminology we talk about, it's new. It's new to my environment. I don't know what it is, and the AV's not picking it up. That's where we came into this advanced threat protection, discovering what something is going to do before it gets into my network. So that's when we started needing to build our threat detection and response capabilities. I don't know how many times I've been in a network with a customer that did not, when we talk about a financial institution, did not have a problem finding bad things. Never had a problem. But what you do next and how you respond to it, that's where we dwell. That's where we make indecisive decisions and we cost a lot of money. I can assure you that was not me. So this is where we build up the response capability, and we test this with our customers. We simulate it. We say, okay, everything from the executive level, what would you do during a crisis? Oh, we would reimage that. No, we wouldn't. We'd do this. Well, we wouldn't do that. Suddenly, they start figuring out, we're not prepared. We have to bring in legal. Oh, we've never talked to the legal department about hacking before. I've sat down with customers that have had breaches, public breaches, and said, let's say nothing to the media. Thankfully, we were there to say, unfortunately, we're going to have to. Because we're going to have to steer this narrative. If you don't, they will. So the response of an organization, and as we all see, banks in the GCC are large, prominent, they're merging. They stand head-to-head with some of the largest capital banks in the world. For instance, the FAB, something like 175 billion equity. That's bigger than Deutsche Bank and most of those ones. So we need to build up those response capabilities, and we need to test them to make sure that the executive branch, the technical people, and the risk are all aware that if this happened, we'd know how to actually act together in a coordinated fashion to ensure our brand is not basically smeared across the internet. So what we start doing then is, as customers in GCC advance, they build a team that can actually respond to these incidents. The gurus, the smart guys, the A1 rock stars, that when you phone them, they know how to deal with it. If they don't have that, they outsource it. They bring in rock stars from outside, on demand, when I need them. Plays well into your response plan, right? And again, look at the public breaches that we've seen recently, where executives are put front and center, responding to the market, to an audience, to their shareholders to say what happened. Now we've gotten into this area of log analytics, which is I ingest billions of logs. Now I want to start doing analytics. This is advanced. It takes severe investments. The value, though, is you can answer a lot of questions tracking back long periods of time, which, when you have a problem, is going to be, what is it? How do we fix it? And who did it? So that's our next tier. This is a considerable investment and requires you to have that basic hygiene in place. There are some institutions that have that. There are some that don't. Executive buy-in is a limiting factor. When when the executives don't see a perceived risk, why should I invest in that? The last part, now we're coming to the apex. We built our teams, we're strong, we're sturdy, we've been tested, we're confident now. Now we start building insurance mechanisms so that we can look back in time in the event that an attack does happen. This is where we look to network forensics. We look for maturing our incident response organization. And finally, at this point, this is where the investment of the threat intel comes in. Why didn't we invest in the threat intel down when we bought the antivirus? Anyone want to harbor a guess? Why didn't we buy it day one when we bought our AV and our firewall? Because we bought a toy. Thank you. We bought something that we thought we could fit into our team. Why? Well, because I read it in a magazine, and because you came in and you pitched it, you vendor. The truth is, the threat intelligence is something we use to advise us on minimizing our investments moving forward. But it requires a level of baseline maturity and capabilities to use. But when we use it, we can do things like, hey, I'm the second largest bank in the UAE. I have this many people, this many sites. Who would target me? Fin 1, 2, 7, APT 16, bing, bang, boom. Wow, all of those guys? Yeah. How did they attack me? Spear phishing, et cetera, PowerShell, bing, bang, boom. Wow, that's a lot. Do I have the controls in place? No. Okay, so if I just got these controls, I don't need to buy all those other shiny tools. Right. Oh, so now you can start steering me where my investments should be. This is interesting. If you don't use that, you just buy everything, right? Guy comes in, hey, you want to buy this? It's purple. It's really good. It can do a gigabit. Yep, sounds good. Next guy comes in, this is blue. Want to buy it? Sure. So we have customers who use this to figure out the playfield, the threat intel that's coming towards us. And when there's an attack, we also use it to build up the context of the incident. So you got customer A, customer B, both attacked by the same one. Customer A says, we got attacked on Tuesday at 1 a.m. by a file. Management have a set of questions. Customer B gets attacked with the same file, but says, this file is leveraged by an Iranian group. We know that this Iranian group will be targeting our SQL servers. We've already started posturing the database administrators to enable activity monitoring. We've started a plan to segregate those SQL servers and harden the controls. And we're very thankful for this. So suddenly, we start to realize where our real critical assets are. At this point, we can start hunting. And if we can hunt, we might be able to catch the adversary after a day or two. Start remediating. Cost of impact? Negligible. If they're in our environment 99 days, cost of impact? On average, 600,000 to 4 million. So the lessons learned from that are, it is a journey. There are steps. Some things should be done after others. Not all toys are cool. We do understand as well that capability and resourcing, skills shortage, these are all factors that limit the capability within the region, or so I've seen over 8 years. But these are just abilities for us to plan out training for our teams, as long as we know where we actually want them to go. So hopefully you guys found that somewhat informative. Thank you all for paying attention, not falling asleep. It was a great presentation, Jacob, and I hope the rest of the day is good. Thank you.